All right, so testing, see if this works. Okay, looks like we're live on YouTube. Trying to go live on Twitch simultaneously. Excuse me. Okay. All right, this is cool. Looks like we are live on both. All right, sorry about this. Just my first time going live simultaneously on Twitch and YouTube here, and so just want to get this right, and then we'll jump right into it. I'll edit this out later. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. All right. Wish I knew how to share my. Sorry, folks. So sorry. So sorry for the delays here. Just letting folks know that we're live. All right. All right. See. All right. Sorry, folks. Okay, we got one in the chat on Twitch. Hey, what's up, Barack Obama? Hello to you too. All right. Nice to meet you. Please, everyone, feel free to comment. If you have any comments in the chat below, I'm going to be getting into it into a sec. I'm going to just talk about what I believe to be the housing crash that's we're on the brink of right now, and we are. I'd like to show you some clip from Dr. Richard Wolff, economist, professor of economics, and just all out insightful dude when it comes to the economy. And I'd like to share some of his thoughts on this and then just look at a couple of key statistics that really highlight the issue. But first, really quickly, I just want to let Twitterverse know that I am live. So you're gonna have to give me one more second to get kicking off, and then we'll get things going. Sorry, folks, almost there. 1 second, right? Yeah, all right. All right, and that will do that. Okay, so thanks for being here, folks. And my name is Kamali Rose, and this is the Radical Democracy Podcast. And today we are going to be discussing what I believe to be the impending housing market collapse and just some of the key factors that are really highlighting that. And hopefully we can talk about some of the things that we can do to try to, some of the potential solutions to those problems, and the likelihood of those things actually getting done. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first clip that I want to show you is from economist and Professor Richard Wolff, and it has to do. This was from an appearance on R.J. Eskow's podcast, and it's from back in June, but I think it's still relevant now. And so I want to show you this and get some of your thoughts, hopefully, and talk more. All right, so sorry, y'all. Well, technical difficulties. This is my first time doing this, so Let's see. All right, so this is Richard Wolff discussing our current economic situation. And I just want to play this clip and then come back and we'll talk a little bit. And then I'll show you a few other key statistics that I think really highlight the current issue. But this is Richard Wolff just talking about essentially highlighting that we're in a class war right now and explaining exactly why he thinks so. So here it is.
When you throw 42 million people, and that's the official count, out of work over the last, let's say, 10 weeks, you are declaring, whether you intend it or not, really is irrelevant. You are declaring class war against the 160 million people in the United States labor force. And let me explain why. First of all, 42 million, that's more than a quarter of the labor force in this country. So however you quarrel about the details, we're talking at least a 25% level of unemployment, and that equals the worst level that unemployment reached in the Great Depression, namely in the year 1933. So we are at, and in all likelihood, likely to exceed, that level of unemployment, which would qualify what we're going through as the worst crisis of capitalism in the history of the United States. It remains.
Okay, so first off, I just want to point out how okay. So I'd like to just point out, really emphasize what he said there at the end, first off, that this is the worst crisis of capitalism in the history of this country. And that means that he's saying that this is worse than the Great Depression of the 1930s. And so, and the reason why, and I think he may get into it and we may play out the clip a little bit more there, but the reason why he says that is that it's not just that we cut so deep, but we cut so quickly. It's the rate of this collapse. I mean, we had, you're talking about throwing, it's got to be at least 50 million people by all, reasonable measures off of their unemployment, and about 30 million people, it was in something in the 20 something million people off of their health insurance. I think it's 27 million people off of their health insurance, but that's not including their dependents. So it's more likely over 51 million people thrown off of health insurance in the midst of a global pandemic. And that right there is class war, and we got to recognize it for what it is. The folks in the ruling class, they know. The folks in the capitalist class, they're aware of this. They're aware of the fact that we're at class war. And I'll be really clear, when I say capitalism, I refer to, the system defined by the employee-employer relationship. Okay, so slavery had the master-slave relationship. Capitalism has the employer-employee relationship. Socialism that I believe in gives it does away with the employer-employee relationship. It makes all people in an enterprise, both of those things really, you're all of it in one, where you have shared democracy. It's just democracy in the workplace. One person, one vote on all major decisions. What to do, where to do it, what to produce, what tools to use to produce it, what to do with the surplus of that labor. That should all be decided by the all workers of an enterprise equally. Okay, so that is the first clip that I wanted to show you. And now I just want to highlight just a few key things. And let me just check, because I'm not paying, full attention here to the stream. So let me just check on comments in these streams. Okay. All right. Good. All right. Looks like we got 4 folks watching the stream right now. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Please feel free to comment. And looks like most already did, but we got four folks viewing and only 3 likes. So please, if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. Below, hit the notification bell to get notifications. All right, so the next piece of the next thing I wanted to draw our attention to was this really, let's check this out. So this is from CNBC, and this was published on July 8th this year. So 32% of U.S. households missed their July housing payments. So I'll just read from the article. As the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic continues, almost 1/3 of U.S. households, 32%, have not made their full housing payments for July yet, according to a survey by Apartment List, an online rental platform. About 19% of Americans made no housing payment at all during the first week of the month, and 13% paid only a portion of their rent or mortgage. So I'll continue. That's the 4th month in a row that a historically high number of households were unable to pay their housing bill on time and in full, up from 30% in June and 31% in May. So renters, low income, and younger households were most likely to miss their payments. Apartment List found. So let's just go back there and see. That's 19% of Americans made no housing payment at all for the first week of the month. So that's 1 in every 5 households in the country made no housing payment. That's either their rent or their mortgage. And 13% more could only pay a portion of that, a part of that. And let me tell you, when you have money, the first thing that you're paying with your money first is food. You got to eat, because you can't, if you're not eating, you got to eat enough to survive. If you can't survive, you can't do anything. So you're eating first, and then after eating, the next thing you're doing is you're paying for your housing. You pay your rent, you pay whatever your housing is. Why? Because you need shelter to survive in this country. We know that. So when 32% of people don't pay their rent, something's up. That's shocking, and that should shock us all. So, all right. So next up, let's just keep on. And this is 4 months. This is the 4th month in a row. So 3 months before this, we're talking about 30%, 31%. So it's up to 32%. But that's 3 months. That's 4 months in a row that almost a third of people in the country could not, or that's 3 months in a row at least, of that a third of people in this country, third of households in this country could not make their rent or housing payments. Okay, so let's couple that with this next thing. So this next story also, this is in CBS News. So this is from July 22nd, 2020. So this is now, yesterday? All right, so yesterday, this article comes out. Federal eviction moratorium ends Friday. Millions of renters are at risk. The clock is ticking for many Americans who have fallen behind on their rent, with a federal moratorium on eviction set to lapse on Friday. That could put more than 12 million renters at risk of losing their home, one analysis shows, while millions more may be exposed as some state eviction bans expire next month. So the end of eviction protections comes at a tough time for many households, given that coronavirus cases have increased in 41 states over the past 2 weeks. That's pushing some governors and local officials to scale back reopening plans. At the same time, and we'll get into this, the extra $600 in weekly federal unemployment aid that millions of jobless workers are collecting is due to expire for about 25 million out-of-work adults within days. Okay, so experts fear the abrupt withdrawal of this support could push many people off the edge of an income cliff, especially in ailing job markets and regions where the coronavirus is spreading. That could hasten eviction proceedings for millions of families. So, I mean, that pretty much that says it all. That was the next thing that I was going to highlight. This is from, again, CNBC. Well, I'll just throw it up here for us. More than 25 million Americans are set to lose the $600 unemployment boost next week. So that's next week. This is from a CBS, a CBS News, CNBC. Sorry. Article from July 17th. So more than 25 million Americans are set to lose the $600 unemployment boost next week. Hey, I'm one of them. So unless Congress acts, the $600 per week boost to unemployment benefits will be cut off at a time when a record number of Americans depend on that assistance. This guy right here is one of them. The $600 weekly payments from the federal pandemic unemployment compensation program were put in place as part of the $2.2 trillion CARES Act that Congress passed in late March amid the coronavirus pandemic. Well, stop right there. It wasn't a $2.2 trillion CARES Act. It was more like a $6 trillion CARES Act, because in fact, about $450 billion of that $2.2 trillion was actually a part of a corporate bailout program that was a part of the Federal Reserve, where they're allowed to leverage it at the Federal Reserve at a 10-to-1 ratio. So it's actually about an additional $4.5 trillion for corporations. So at the same time that they gave $1.5 trillion to workers and small businesses, they decided it was sufficient to do that while giving $4.5 trillion to large corporations. And let's not forget that many large corporations also dipped into very heavily, might I add, into that small business fund. And many of them only gave back the money when they were publicly shamed into doing so. Like, off the top of my head, I remember Shake Shack was the one off the top of my head that rings a bell. So they took 10 million and had to give that back. So let's see. So going back, they say, all right, so Americans who are eligible for unemployment insurance receive an extra $600 on top of what they normally claim under their state's benefits. Yet this boost is scheduled to end for all states except New York on Saturday, July 25th. That's 3 days from now. New York's end date is Sunday, July 26th. Ooh. According to the Department of Labor. So roughly 25.6 million workers are set to be impacted by this benefit loss, according to recent estimates by the progressive think tank, the Century Foundation. That includes 15.6 million Americans enrolled in regular state unemployment programs who currently receive the extra $600 boost, and about 9 million people on the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, PUA, which specifically covers business owners, self-employed Americans, gig workers, and independent contractors who are not eligible for unemployment. Approximately 1 million Americans receiving benefits through the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation also get the $600 boost. While the $600 unemployment boost program is set to end this month, the PUA and PEUC programs will run until the end of 2020. So, all right, so let's just say, and this is a little bit unclear at the end there. They say approximately 1 million Americans receiving benefits through the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, that's PEUC, also get the $600 boost. While the $600 unemployment boost program, okay, I see, is set to end this month, the PUA and PEUC programs will run until the end of 2020. So yeah, I'm actually a part of the PEUC program as well, but it's fairly limited in its scope. It's only about like 13 weeks long. PEUC, from what I understand, at least it's a federal program, I believe, so I think it's the same nationwide. How it's being implemented here in Massachusetts, because there is some flexibility with that in some of these programs. You have 13 weeks of it if you're somebody that used to collect unemployment within the past like year or so, and it ran out, then you were able to get back on to unemployment at some slightly reduced rate, but then also with the $600 federal pandemic unemployment compensation, FPUC, on top of it. That's $600 a week payment on top of it, which in my case at least, and probably most people's, made it more than what their previous payment was. So for me though, I don't make more than what I used to make, but when I was working, but still I make enough to right now be comfortable and not you know, under constant stress of like, you know, running out of money. I'm able to spend enough money to spend it in local businesses and keep, you know, spending back into, you know, all the money gets spent up into you know, largely into local businesses. So that's the economic stimulating effect of giving, you know, average working class folks money. So all right, so now all right, sorry about that. So a little weird there. Sorry about the way that looked. All right, so let me just check the comments, see if anyone has any comments, but I got a lot to say about this, and I will get into it in a moment. Just want to make sure that I'm not ignoring anyone here. Okay. Cool. All right, please, if you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to comment in the chat. Always appreciate it. Okay. So with that, I mean, it's clear as day what's going on. And something else that I should highlight about this is that Congress is not acting. That's what the real concerning thing is here, is that Congress is not acting. And I think they kind of got into it. They started to get a little bit into it in the article about the federal eviction moratorium ending Friday. And what that means, the federal eviction moratorium ending is, you know, that if you're not familiar, the eviction moratorium means they put a hold on all evictions. There was still happening, trust me, because people will find ways to get through loopholes and still evict people even in the middle of a crisis like that. That's just capitalists going capitalist, right? And so that's, you know, that was still going on. Evictions were still happening, but at the very least, there was this national moratorium on it, this federal moratorium on it that gave a lot of protections to consumers in the housing market that allowed them to stay in their homes without having to face eviction. However, most of those moratoriums, that I think the way that the federal moratorium was structured was that it wasn't a complete moratorium in the sense that it said those rents or mortgages are just canceled. They should have canceled all mortgages, made the, you know, whoever they need to make whole at the, you know, at the very top, or, you know, do that by just giving people money. That's the best way to do it. The ideal way to do this, let's be real, would have been give people money, right? And give them the money and more than enough money, and then let them make those payments themselves, right? So that there's no way for these companies to screw working class people over. That would be ideal. But at the very least, they could have put a moratorium on all mortgages and then said, all right, on top of that, we'll provide funding. They're already injecting like $1 trillion a day into the stock market, and the Federal Reserve has injected trillions of dollars into the stock market to prop it up. It's the only reason why the stock market looks like it's doing so great. It's not really doing great. It's just that they are artificially inflating the market. So, but all of these are signs of a coming this impending economic collapse, or we're about to have a second economic collapse, and one that is going to be really at risk of putting millions of Americans out of their homes. So we're talking about a potential for, you know, a mass homelessness on a scale that we haven't seen since the Great Depression, and possibly never having seen anything like it in the history of this country before. And that's, you know, and that's a real sick thing about this. Something else that we got to pay attention to with this pandemic is that the homeless are so vulnerable in the midst of this pandemic, right? Like, look at what we were all instructed to do to stay safe during the pandemic, right? Shelter in place, wear masks, right? Socially distance, stay 6 feet apart, right? And continually, wash your hands as much as possible, right? Wash your hands. That was one of the number one things, right? Well, who really struggles to have access to all those things? I wonder. Well, maybe the homeless who have no homes to shelter in place of may find it very hard to stay 6 feet away from people if they're crowding into homeless shelters, possibly. Don't have money to pay for masks, or have spare clothing to use as a mask, and certainly don't have sources of clean running water and hand sanitizer supplies on deck. So we know that this is already something that we should be, extremely concerned about, and realize and recognize that that's a massive societal failure, a massive moral failure on our society, on our part, when we leave at least 500,000, by actual estimates, it's about 550, almost 600 million homeless Americans right now. But we all know that homeless people are severely undercounted. So let's just say at least 1 million homeless in this country, right? 330 million people, 1 million of them homeless. You're talking about, 1/3% almost, of people homeless in the richest country in the history of the world. And so, it's already a travesty that what we do to people. But now we've just thrown about 50 million people off of their health insurance, and now we're talking about throwing tens of millions of people out of their homes in the middle of a global pandemic, when the U.S. has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's coronavirus cases and deaths. So how's that? We always seem to come in that way, right? We're always the best in all the worst statistics in that way, right? We have 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's incarcerated, right? That's America. That's what we do here, So let me just pause real quick to take a quick look at the comments. Okay, What Up America says, this is so avoidable. Really is an abdication of duty by the federal government as a whole. Absolutely. So let me say that again. What Up America? And hey, What Up America? So glad to have you. We've been collaborating a little behind the scenes, so really appreciate everything you're doing. And thank you so much. And I'll be in touch. I saw your email, just haven't had a chance because things have been crazy, but I'll get back to you on that. So thank you so much for that, and I'll reach back out. Keep up the great work. So What Up America says, and this is in the YouTube chat here, this is so avoidable. It really is an abdication of duty by the federal government as a whole. Absolutely. That's the craziest thing here, is how the Congress has just sat on their hands through this whole damn thing. Like they don't know any better. Like, they've gone on recesses, which are vacations essentially, while, turning around and telling essential workers that they don't deserve any sort of time away from work or anything like that. They have to get right back into it and go risk their lives. And so, this is an absolute abdication of duty by our federal government, from top to bottom. Obviously, the Trump administration has a lot of power that they could enact these things if they wanted to, by executive order, or by, if he went to Congress and said, give me a bill that says this, the Republicans would do it if it was something that, it was there to help working class people. Now, in the midst of this, the Republicans are just horrendous. I mean, the Democrats have been so weak on this themselves, but the Republicans are absolutely horrendous in that they are trying to use this time to cut Social Security and give a few more $1 trillion in corporate in tax cuts to corporations. So they're the absolute worst, because they're trying to do just the absolute opposite. These things that have just been proven over and over and over again to not work, they continue to do this. And so they're just so stuck in their ideology, even though their ideology has been proven to be a broken ideology that has been proven wrong time and time again. They still stick with it. And so it tells them, tax cuts for the rich and cut on social programs. And so even in the midst of such a crisis, when we have mass unemployment, mass, housing, we're in the midst of a housing crisis like this, and that's all that they can come up with is tax cuts for the rich and cut on social programs. So that's what they proposed, is making compromises like that for jokes of things like they proposed $400 a month for a replacement for the unemployment, federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which is the $600 a week payment right now. They propose to go from $600 a week, which is $2,400 a month, a little bit more than that when you recognize that there's a few more days than 4 weeks in every month, but so $600 a week is at least $2,400 a month. And you're talking about going from $2,400 a month to $400 a month, which is not even enough to cover rent, I think. And I don't even know. You name me a place. Does anybody live in any place where $400 is enough to get you even a studio apartment anywhere? I've lived in and around Boston, Massachusetts for most of my life, and I've never seen a place. I don't even think when I was younger and rents weren't this insane, I don't know if there were places where you could find a studio apartment of your own for $400 a month. Like, that sounds absurd to me. So I don't think that exists anywhere in the country. Maybe it does in some really remote, like rural parts of the country. Maybe I don't know about that, but $400 a month, I don't think that's going to pay the rent for 99% of people out there, much less rent, food, electricity, internet, because let's be real, you can't even do your job right now without the internet for most people. If you're either an essential worker or you're working from home, in which case you need internet access in order to have a job, or you're going to end up unemployed. And you see the current unemployment situation. We have people having to camp overnight in some states for a ticket to get just a meeting with the unemployment office. And so people are even as much as the unemployment numbers are, it's way worse than that, way worse than what's being told, because those numbers are always severely undercounting. They're missing the people that aren't even able to get through. Most of those unemployment offices have been so overwhelmed, and they're on such outdated systems that they are struggling to make it through. So couldn't agree more. What up, America? Thank you for the comment. It really is avoidable, and Congress is doing nothing right now. We're a week away from this thing. We're a week away. This should have already, we shouldn't have gotten to a week away. This is what they love to do. These politicians love to play this game where they are forcing you to be dependent on them. They want to force this dependency on them, where we have to beg them to please give us a little bit more. Please give us a little bit more. Why? Because okay, looks like we lost the connection. All right, I think we might be coming back up here. Okay, sorry about that, y'all. I think there's a storm going on right now where I'm at. So out here, right outside of Boston, and there's a storm right now. So connection could get a little spotty. I think we're back, though. I think we're live again. So just going to get right back into it. So yes, this is absolutely Congress has... We're 1 week out from this thing. We're days out now. From today's the 23rd in Massachusetts, the 25th, 2 days away from the end of the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, the end of that $600 a month. And we're about to fall off a cliff. All of those people, I'm one of them, that are depending on that money to keep things comfortable. Like, I'm in a really good situation, I'll say, where I have I stay with a really good friend who I'm privileged in that way, but most people aren't going to have the same privilege that I have in order to have okay, thank you. What Up America says YouTube is working, so I think I'm back now. Thank you so much. So yeah, I think it was absolutely something that Congress could have done months ago. Honestly, they could have made it so that we would have had all they needed to do was put special triggers in place where, okay, they're economic triggers that they'll put in place where they say, if we are still at X percentage of unemployment level, right? And it's so ridiculous because right now they're saying that we're at like something like 12 to 15% unemployment or something like that. But really it's been over 20% for a while now, and those are the real numbers. And so, and that's not like me making this up or conspiracy theory wise. Like folks like economist Richard Wolff has said it, and David Dayen has said it, that the numbers are actually much higher. Even there was a chairman from the Federal Reserve in St. Louis who also said it, that those numbers are actually much higher. Okay, nice. We're up to 5 viewers here. Thank you for coming to the stream. Really appreciate you being here. If you're just joining us, please do me a favor and like and subscribe. Click the notification below. Click that bell below to get notifications. All right. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Please, and comment. Love to hear from you folks. So please. All right. So they could have put these economic triggers in place that would have said, all right, if we're still over X% of unemployment, then the weekly payments are going to be $600 a month. If we're still over 10% unemployment, then the weekly payments are going to be $600 a month. If we're over 8% unemployment, it's going to be $400 a month. If we're over 9% unemployment, it's going to be $500, and just keep ticking down based on some economic factors, right? The unemployment rate. No, honestly, I couldn't see anything out other than that they could use other than the unemployment rate. So based on that, they could just do this and put some economic triggers in place and say, we're going to check every, say, 2 months or something, every month if they want to be really, safe about it, just do every month. These economic triggers are in place, and as long as we are not at this point economically, then we are going to keep on giving people the support that they need. Now, what we would have done in a sane society is we would have something at least akin to a universal basic income, or what sometimes they have like a universal minimum wage is also a possible thing, but I like the universal basic income. And we've done universal basic incomes in this country before. Alaska has had a universal basic income for about 50 years now. That's one of the longest running universal basic income experiments in the world. And what that is that they struck oil essentially in Alaska. They didn't strike it. I mean, they went. We know what. Okay, so there's oil in Alaska, and these folks are. What they did was the state said, all right, well, we're going to take the profits from drilling this oil in our public lands and everything. These are public lands. All the lands are public, so we're all impacted by the bad effects when these people drill and frack and do all these other crazy things. We're all impacted by it, and so in a sane democracy, we would all have something to say. We would all have an equal input in that. But we don't have a fair democracy, and that's according to folks like Richard Wolff and David Harvey, Cornel West, you can't have democracy in your political system until you get democracy in the workplace. So in your economic system, you got to teach people how to participate in democracy, and then they recognize how badly they were getting screwed over in their political democracy. If we had a economic democracy, if we had to show up every day and participate in democracy instead of showing up once every 2 to 4 years to participate in democracy. If democracy was something that we did every day, we would learn, and we wouldn't want to give it up, and we would be practiced in it. So yeah, I think that this certainly could have been avoided, and it's not too late for them to give these payments. They could somehow come up with this bill, some last minute legislation right now, and put it in place before this economic cliff that we're about to run over. But right now there are no signs of that. The proposals coming out of the GOP are just absurd. Some of them are just, it's inhumane with some of the stuff that they're proposing. And then the Democrats, as always, they do what the Democrats do. They're just weak. They have their corporate donors, right? And their corporate donors, they're torn on this, but they just the greed. They have so much. They're so damn greedy. They just can't see straight. And so you have a few that are thinking more clearly, that think we should keep things slowly reopen. And there's a lot of people that see the sensibility. I heard even Sagar and Jetty on Rising the Hill on the Hill talking about how the GOP is insane to be not giving an economic stimulus right now when they're in an election year. They could literally be buying votes right now with the government money. They could be buying votes and stimulating the economy in a way that would actually keep our country safer and protect our national security. But they could give the money away, give government money away. They don't have to use their campaign funds or anything like that. Just give away government money to support the people and keep things going, and then that would keep the economy humming along enough, because right now consumer spending is 70% of our economy. Last I checked, 70% of our economy is consumer spending. So most people right now, many people, many families, I would say, probably right now, well, the numbers are clear, right? We have about 25% unemployment or so. You got over 15% of people sitting there on unemployment benefits right now, of over 15% of the workforce. You're talking about probably 1 in every 4 families at least that are, 1 in every 4 households at least that are going to just be falling off of an economic cliff in a week if we don't get that stimulus back. Because, and let's be real, a $400 stimulus is not going to cut it. If they give $400 a month, that's not going to cut it. That $1,200 a month was a joke. That $1,200 stimulus that some people still haven't even gotten yet, but that $1,200 stimulus, that thing, if you got that, you spent that thing in like a week, a day for most people, honestly. I mean, that thing was in my account and then it was out. It was a day, seriously. I mean, I had so many, bills to catch up on, and just, I mean, your basic, rent, food, everything, just, that's gone. That's out the door. I mean, that can't even cover, that can barely cover rent. For me, and that wouldn't cover rent if I had my own place or anything like that. And anywhere around where I live, like, you can't get a place for like, you can get like a studio for like $1,200-$1,300 if you're living in some remote places outside of Boston. Like, you can get a studio for like $1,200-$1,300, but it's gonna be like in a unsafe neighborhood, probably, like, yeah, whatever. So so this is where we're at, and right now there's no sign of Congress. They have a couple of proposals in there. The Democrats put forward the HEROES Act, which was a joke. It was so weak on its face, and they knew that it wasn't going to pass. It was just a wish list, and the wish list was so weak. It didn't even include payments to like another stimulus payment or anything like that. It was just, it did include an extension of the FPUC, the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, which would have given the $600 a week payments. That would have extended it till December, which was good, but it didn't help small businesses enough. It didn't help families that aren't on unemployment. There's a lot of people that aren't on unemployment. They need help too. Not everybody was able to get unemployment, and some people are have been unemployed for so long, and this pandemic is only going to make it worse with mass unemployment. Now you're competing for jobs against like how many times more people than you were competing for jobs against before. So that's only exacerbated the problem for those people. A lot of people are not in the work, they're not in the workforce, but only because they've given up hope. They've given up and they stopped trying to look for jobs. But it's not because they wouldn't take one if one came along. They want to work. They've given up trying because there's been nothing out there for them for so long. And so now we're at the point that people are hurting. We got 32%, 1 in every 3 families are not able to make housing payments right now. Like, you don't not pay your housing if you got the money. You only do that if you're in some dire straits, and that's 3-4 months in a row. These landlords are not all wonderful people that are like sitting around saying like, we're totally cool with it. You guys just keep on not paying us and we'll just eat that cost. No, we know, who the landlords in this world are. And not that every landlord is a bad landlord. Like I just said, I have a decent landlord. I have an awesome landlord. My landlord is one of my best friends. Like, that's my landlord. I'm lucky, but I'm one of the lucky ones. Most people got landlords that aren't the greatest folks, and or they're half decent people, but they're just they're going to be struggling too, because they nobody gave them a moratorium either on their payments, and so, or the moratorium on payments are ending. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us? It means that we are, we're on the brink of something unheard of, unseen before in our history, and there's really no precedent for it, is what we're seeing. If you listen to folks like Professor Richard Wolff, if you're listening to folks like that, then he's been right about so much over and over and over, and so been so consistent on this, that we got to listen to the people that you go back and you look at it, and there's these people that are on like mainstream news and stuff, and they're all paid to just be like wrong. Like they're all like they're paid wrong people. Like they're paid to be wrong. Much like the Democratic Party is paid to lose. Like these people are paid to push losing ideologies. Why? Because it suits the corporate, general ruling class. It suits the people that have the most money in this world. And so those, if it's going to keep those things, if it's going to keep the rich, then those ideas, even if you're wrong about it, you can go on MSNBC, CNN, NBC, you can go on these news networks, and you can go and just espouse the most neoliberal debunked BS on the planet, and you'll keep getting jobs. You'll be paid millions of dollars, like Rachel Maddow over here with Russiagate, and you can do all these sorts of things, and you will get so much coverage, and you'll get you will keep getting invited back on to these shows, even if you're proven wrong time and time and time again. These people that are just have been so historically wrong. Larry Kudlow, the current what is he like? Is it Secretary of the Treasury or and that dude is currently right before the 2008 housing crash. He was famously like, oh, everything's so great right now and there's nothing wrong, and the economy's just humming along and it's all good. And then economic crash and collapse, literally weeks later, and like Lehman Brothers goes under days after he says that, and it's just the economic collapse happens. And then this dude is now Secretary of the Treasury, or Trump's number one whatever top economic advisor. I think that's what it is, top economic advisor. The dude is paid to be wrong. He also had what was it? It was $1 million a month cocaine habit or something like that. It was something absurd. It was something. All right, you think I'm crazy, but I'm gonna show you all that. I'm not wilding. I'm not making that up. So Tammy Van says, and the pandemic is definitely putting a strain on job availability / hiring process. Yes, that's another thing, which is that it's if you're already, things have already been tough, right? People, so many people laid off and everything. Now, if you're one of those people, you're all of a sudden, you're now competing for jobs, not against, what was it before? We had, what was it, historically low unemployment, according to the way that they calculate unemployment. Because like I said before, they calculate it using some really shady numbers about where they ask you, are you still interested in looking for work? And if you suddenly say you're not, you've given up looking for work because maybe you've given up hope because you still want a job, there's no jobs out there for you, and you give up hope, then you don't get counted as unemployed anymore. So you're no longer part of the active workforce, and so you don't get counted as unemployed. So that's obviously tricky right there. So but yeah, now all of a sudden you're competing for jobs against tens of millions more people. So now it's much harder to try to find work, which is just going to put a lot in because of the pandemic and the remote, access to everything. All of a sudden the hiring process is going to be slowed down for everybody, right? Because companies are just learning on the fly how to do this remotely. Things are going to be a little bit, there's just some stickiness there where it's there's going to be some friction there. And so that definitely adds to it. Great point, Tammy. Tammy also says, I applied to a few jobs from Harvard right before Massachusetts went into quarantine / places closed up in mid-March. And when I recently started getting back into applying for jobs and I failed again, I see that. Yep. They're on a hiring freeze for an indefinite amount of time. LOL. Yep. So these companies, and I'm sorry to hear that. And that's it sucks. It's not fair to just expect people to be able to just bounce back from this, or act like people are not working because they're just it's just that, you know, things are so great they just don't want to go back to work or something. You know, most people want the long-term security of a job. Most people want to work. Most people want to be doing meaningful work, of course. And before this pandemic hit, a lot of us, you know, did not have jobs that we felt were meaningful jobs. But yeah, they absolutely deserve a chance to get out there and to get back into their field and everything. And they want to, but the reality is that a lot of these companies have slowed down their hiring processes, and that has a net effect on people. And so it's just those channels. There's this huge a huge additional bottleneck that's been added in the hiring process and in the reemployment process. And on top of the fact that just a lot of businesses have closed down, and there's just like those places aren't coming back. The economies, there's no magical switch to flip to turn this thing back on. And a lot of people just don't feel safe in certain workplaces, depending on what your workplace is. If you're in the restaurant business or travel business, like that's not going to come back with like great elasticity. Those jobs didn't have elasticity for us in a situation like this. So Tammy Van says they're forcing people to go back to work so working class people can make them more money, and so they don't need to extend the extra federal $600 a week for unemployment. Yeah, that's great. Like, that's so sick that they're like, and this is literally because they feel like they're gonna, two things. That one, like, they think, okay, we're gonna end up having to pay more in taxes for this, so they don't want to do that. So that's already like, you know, a big no for them. But then on top of that, they're like, and big scary thing, you know, the government is currently giving people a livable amount of money every week, and they're going to get used to, surviving comfortably instead of barely surviving at all on our barely living wage. And so now all of a sudden you're going to get people who are, you know, like, expecting more. Oh no, that would just be the worst thing. And what could they all do? What could they do to, if they're so worried that the $600 a week in unemployment benefits is giving people more than what they would make at work? Well, what could you do? Oh, that's easy. You could continue to give people the $600 a week benefit even if they return to work, right? Which would be a $600 a week universal basic income. And I could say, cut it down to $500 a week, you know, just do a $500 a week universal basic income for everybody. And let's stick there or whatever. And we can build our society, build our economy around that. But $500 a week if they want to slightly reduce it. And I think I did the math on this to give every person in the country, I think every adult, I might have done every person. I think it's, if you want to give them $2,000 a month for 6 months, I think it's $2 trillion, I believe, or $4.5 trillion, because I'll go back and I'll do the math again. I'll pull up a calculator in a second. We can bust this down real quick. So Tammy says that they're trying to push people off unemployment. Like, if you say you care about small business, then I don't know why you don't. Then why don't you bail them out and instead of giving small businesses like Shake Shack $10 million loan? Exactly. You know, like you'll notice that politicians, two of the things they love to go to is like, oh, the children. We have to do this for the children. And they'll just blame everything. Like, they'll just like use the children as some scapegoat to just like pander and give platitudes and never promise anything real, right? But they'll just be like, but oh, the children. And so there's always, oh, the children. Or they're like, you know, small businesses are the backbone of this country. Like, how, like, there's got to be some sort of thing. Like they love small businesses are the backbone of this country. Like, there have to be clips of hundreds or thousands of politicians saying that, right? Small businesses are the backbone of this country. So they love saying this stuff. But then when push comes to shove, what did they do? They gave $1.5 trillion to small businesses and working class people, right? They gave $1.5 trillion in the CARE Stimulus Act. They gave $1.5 trillion to small businesses and working class people, and they gave $4.5 trillion to big corporations, right? And so, yeah, it's like, and this is their thing. They want to push people off of unemployment because they think that this is their other idea. It's like, oh, well, if people weren't getting unemployment, then they would be forced to come back to work, right? And so this is their sick, twisted plan to try to push people back into unsafe like workplaces, right? Like these places that are unsafe, where they're not even going to have business. And mind you, problem number two, businesses need business to succeed, right? Like they need consumers, they need customers, right? Well, it's really hard to be a customer somewhere when all of a sudden your income drops by $2,400 a month, which is about to happen to, I don't know, 25.6 million people. So you're about to give 25.6 million people, which, think of how many families that's impacting in the country. You're talking about it's about 10, it's just shy of 10%, 7% or so, 8% of the country, and you're just going to throw those people off of their, you're going to take away $2,400 a month from all those families. So you're probably talking about, again, 1 in every 4, 1 in every 3 families that's going to be directly impacted by that financial cliff we're about to fall off of. So Tammy says, also, there are so many complications and issues with getting the unemployment benefits. I'm sure it's different per state, but the hoops I had to go through and the shady no notification things they require. Yeah, this is another thing. So I'll just talk about some like personal anecdotal sort of stuff, all the hoops that they make you jump through, for one, like they, especially if you're talking about here in Massachusetts, so I'll just get a little local for y'all, but like here in Massachusetts or whatever, we have the Department of Unemployment Assistance, DUA, and in order to get through to them, like I've witnessed firsthand people's personal, struggle and difficulty. One, just getting through in the first place, like getting on the phone with the person. The wait times are crazy right now. Like wait times have been through the roof. And so that alone is tricky. But then on top of that, it's like, once you get through, it's like, they're telling you that you need to like, for one, they're not sending the paperwork. Like the automated things aren't triggering in the system, and so they're just like, people fall through these cracks, and then all of a sudden you're having to call them, and when you call, they give you the runaround, and then they tell you, okay, we'll put this through, and then they put this through, and then it takes another 2 days, and then you call back, and they're like, oh no, it never went through. Let me do that again, and so there's all these hoops, and then like they also. For PUA, for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, they decided to do this like identity verification process because they said that they were allegedly, a bunch of people were making fraudulent claims, they say, in other people's names. So they decide to make the default the assumption that everybody's fraud, and make it so that they send out identity verifications for every single person. So they just assume across the board everyone's a fraud, and then they then force you to have to respond. Well, for me, I got told a week before they decided to do this, they told me to go switch from there's another system called the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, which we talked about earlier, and that system is a separate website, even though here in Massachusetts it's maintained by the same government department, the DUA. They maintain it. They still 2 separate websites, one for your regular state unemployment benefit, and then another for the federal only pandemic unemployment assistance. And for that one, the system is much easier to sort of go through, but much less sort of red tape to cut through. But then I was using that one. Then they told me, okay, you got to go switch over to the DUA. And then when I switched over to DUA, they told me, okay, well, they sent something to my PUA apparently requesting identity verification. I didn't get it. I didn't get a notification about it, so I didn't verify it. I went on doing what I was told to do, claiming for the past how many, whatever, 6-7 weeks or whatever on the other system. And then I got a notification saying that I had passed the deadline for this identity verification, and now they're telling me that I owe them $11,000. Well, I disputed it. The only way that you can file an appeal, and so I filed an appeal online. I tried to call. They refused to give you. They won't let you talk to a person. You can't just like talk to a person about it, and which is absurd, because I'm like, well, if you need more people to handle the claims, guess what? You guys are the unemployment office. Hire more people. Like, that's one really easy, efficient way to cut down those unemployment numbers a bit, is to give some people some jobs. So, you could just hire more people to process these claims. Hell, hire me, give me enough money, I'll go do that work. Okay. To help more people get money. I would love to do that. Are you kidding me? So I would gladly do that. So, instead they make you go through the system, online system only, and then you appeal, and then they're like, okay, it's a 4 to 7 week process. I'm luckily on I'm getting unemployment somewhere else, or else I would be under like immense stress. I wouldn't be doing this program right now, and I would be under immense stress. And so absolutely, and I know Tammy's in the same boat there, and having to jump through hoops. I have another really close friend of mine, one of my best friends, who was denied unemployment, and then was denied unemployment because his job, which let me just say was the MBTA, which is the Massachusetts Bay Transport Authority. So our like public transportation, the company, I think it's a private company that runs our public transportation system here in this state, because capitalism, and so this private company runs our public transportation system, which should never exist in any civil society anywhere, let's just say. Okay. Transportation is public. That should be controlled democratically by the people, not by a private corporation. So and should be free. Public transportation should be free. It's the only way to make it fair. Make it a public service that is paid for through taxation, progressive taxation, period. Okay, so Tammy, I want to catch up. She says that they rely on people who aren't financially literate, etc., or are afraid to dispute things and drag out the process to resolve issues so you can give up on trying for unemployment benefits. Yep, exactly. Like, I'll read through all of our comments here. They're making more work and complicating things for their own employees, as if the unemployment offices weren't already overwhelmed. They put a deadline for that PUA. Okay, so let me just get to those first. Yeah, so they rely on people who aren't financially literate, etc., or afraid to dispute things and drag out the process to resolve issues so you can give up on trying for unemployment benefits. Absolutely. So they slow it down. They try to put as much obstacles in your way as possible so that it's as difficult as possible, and so that you can't get through ultimately, right? And so yeah, that's 100%. That's exactly right. So they expect so many people to be like, English isn't your first language. We just, in this state of Massachusetts, we just added a Spanish language version of the unemployment website. So before, all those materials weren't even available in Spanish, much less if you speak any other language and English isn't your first language. So any ESL people are going to be automatically at a disadvantage here. And which is just so many reasons why universal basic income, right? Universal basic income. You get a social security card or a taxpayer identification number. You got one of those, you get a check. That's it. Every single week or every single month, however they want to do it. I don't care. Do it by the month, whatever. Allows people to make big expenses. I don't care, whatever. Do it by the week, do it by the month. Whichever one. And that it should just be, it's that easy. No red tape, no extra bureaucracy needing to be created, no time wasting, unfulfilling jobs to be created from this, where you feel bad. You have to go home feeling bad because you couldn't get somebody their unemployment benefits that's struggling and suffering, because these people are hearing some horror stories too. If you work at one of these unemployment offices, like, you're probably hearing some horror stories from people, and that's going to weigh on your mental health. And so there's a whole mental health component to this. These aren't jobs that are great jobs. I don't want these jobs to exist in my society. I don't want those jobs to exist. Those aren't good jobs. Those aren't the kind of jobs that we need to exist. So much of our society is creating jobs for the sake of just having jobs and stuff, and it's gross when we have to do that. So don't create new jobs. Just let people work less and spread the work around, and keep paying them the same, and pay them more. Don't pay them the same. Pay them a living wage. Tammy says they're making more work and complicating things for their own employees, as if the unemployment offices weren't already overwhelmed. And I just want to say, going back to the last point too, that's gonna disproportionately, the fact that they put all these hoops to jump through and obstacles, deliberately, all this red tape, that's going to, of course, as with everything, disproportionately impact marginalized people, right? So we know that it's going to always disproportionately impact the marginalized. So people that aren't speaking English as their first language, or people that with disabilities, or people that are especially if you have like a reading disability or anything like that, or a learning disability, anything like that. It's going to be especially difficult. And then also like, that's pretty much, so those people are going to be particularly, further marginalized. So then Tammy says that they put a deadline for that PUA identity verification action without notifying people. LOL. And my email is definitely signed on for notifications because they sure didn't have any problems notifying people they owe. Yeah, right. That they owe money, right? Yeah, exactly. They didn't. They same thing happened to me. So they sent out they didn't send out a notification when they requested the identity verification, right? They have both Tammy's and my email. They have our email on file, right? And when they requested the identity verification saying, if you don't verify your identity, we're going to assume you are a fraud, right? So we're going to assume this is fraudulent if you don't verify your identity. They didn't send a notification out when they sent that message out. So they sent that message out and they didn't send the notification. But then when the deadline expired, then they sent out a notification that you actually got, which I got, that then said, hey, too late, it's already too late. Now you owe money. And for me, it's an absurd amount, $11,000. Like, I'm not going to be able to pay that ever. And what have I been able to do with unemployment? Like, I've been able to like get my life back on track for the most part, just catch back up, pay off debt that I had, credit card debt that was like weighing over me, get my car back legitimized again, like registered, insured, all that sort of stuff, like able to like pay off the we have like these like the toll pass that can keep your registration from getting renewed and your license from getting renewed. It can block those like if you don't pay the tolls. Like I owed them like $1,000. like those things you wouldn't be able to pay if it wasn't for that Bernie Sanders, let me say, that amendment that Bernie Sanders fought for to get the FPUC, the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, that $600 a week payment. So shout out to Bernie for that. Bernie. All right, so shout out to Bernie. Bernie should have won. So Tammy says, like, how you gonna put a deadline on something required without telling people? LOL, right? You know what I'm saying? That's ridiculous. That's absurd. Like, you can't do that. Like, but they did, and now there's a handful of people, not more than a handful. There's a bunch of people that are gonna get screwed over because of that. There's a bunch of people that they keep doing these, they keep playing these games and putting these holds and all these kinds of things. Before, they also did this thing where they stopped, what did they do? They just didn't pay people for like a week at first with the fraud thing. Like for like 2 weeks, they held people's payments on when they first came out with this like fraud thing. They held people's payments, everybody that I knew, and I know a lot of people on unemployment. Like, seriously, I can count right now people that I know, myself, and then I know at least 10 people on unemployment right now. So I know at least 10 people, and that's just what, like, top of my head right now. And that's just people really close and around me, or people that are close to people close to me that I know of that are unemployed right now. And that's just right in my direct circle. So 10 people that I know. And this happened to everybody because everybody was freaking out when it happened. This was on the pandemic unemployment assistance, that they just stopped making payments when they first came out with this whole fraud claim or whatever. And suddenly people just didn't get paid. And that happened for like 2 or 3 weeks for some people. It was like 2 weeks of not getting paid. And I'm telling you, that is so much stress. If you're somebody, 80% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck before this happened, right? Over 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 40% of Americans can't survive more than a $400 emergency without having to borrow some money or, file for bankruptcy. And so people are already on the brink of, and they were just already hurting. And so this was like, when you're now, at this point, luckily, for a lot of people, let's be real, this was more money they were getting on unemployment, which was great. I thought that was like, man, that was so good that people were finally, for the first time, getting a dignified wage, really. I mean, for a lot of people, it was a dignified wage for the first time. Maybe ever, maybe in a long time, but for a lot of people, it was a dignified wage for the first time ever. If you're like a fast food employee or something like that, like you've been devalued. And if you're like a service worker or a care worker, like in this country, in the US, that the average wage of child care workers, daycare workers. So the average wage of a daycare worker is less than the average wage of the median wage. The median wage of a daycare worker is less than the median wage of a valet in this country. So we pay more money to the people who park cars than the people that literally care for our children all day long. So that's how we value things in our society. Because does that make sense? No, but let's be real. Who has valet jobs and who has childcare jobs, right? It's a bunch, usually going to be women doing childcare, and it's usually going to be men doing valet work. And so because we have patriarchal systems in place, patriarchy is going to, when you have a system like capitalism in place, it allows these unjust power structures to be propagated through the economic system. And so things like patriarchy are going to propagate their way through the economic system. And then voila, we got valets getting paid more than childcare workers, because that makes perfect sense. Like somebody that has to move a friggin', hunk of metal around, clearly needs the same kind of resources as somebody who's literally caring for our child when they're in their most delicate stages of their lives, right? Like usually like up to like 2-3 years old. Like you're talking about the most like delicate vulnerable stages of a child's life, and like their most important critical developmental years. Like I want those people to have the best resources. I want them to have enough pay that enough of them can work, that they don't have to be stressed out. They don't have to work like extra hours and pick up extra hours to do this stuff or anything like that. I want there to be more, there's so many people that would do that kind of work, and it could be communal. And so, yeah, these are all political decisions that get made. And so, yeah. So just want to say again to anyone that's here, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. Please, if you haven't already, do me a favor, like and subscribe below. And if you feel so compelled to and can, please do me a favor. And I'd really like to make this channel, a regular thing as much as possible, and hopefully like spruce up production value, all that sort of thing eventually. But really just to keep it going and to be able to do it regularly would really help to have some income coming in from it. I mean, I'm surviving on unemployment right now, but like at some point that's going to run out, and then I will have to reduce this significantly. I won't be able to do it like I am right now, or maybe at all, if I can't get some sort of stream of income going. So if you can, please do me a favor, and I dropped a link to my Patreon in the description of the video below. So if you can just like open up that description below, and you'll see a link to my Patreon in there. And if you could just go there and drop a couple bucks, I would really appreciate it. It would really mean a lot. So it helps us keep this thing going, and it would really mean a lot. So if you can, please just hit that, check out the description below, Patreon link in there, and just go and drop me a few bucks a month, $3, $5 if you can. I mean, that's huge. If that's too much, let me know, and I'll do like a $1 one or something like that. But like I was kind of afraid to do that, because I'm like, if you can only afford $1 a month, like, should I be asking those people for money if $1 is all you can afford? It sounds like things are probably tight, and like I shouldn't be asking you for money. So like I felt kind of bad doing $1, but then if people say like, no, I want to do $1, and like I can only do $1, but I do $1, I can't do more, let me know, and I'll add a different tier and just drop down the tier so that I can, you can just like do $1 or $2 a month or something like that. I wish there was a way, and I don't know if there's a way on Patreon. Let me know if you know, please, in the comments below. If there's a way to, or the chat, the live chat, is there a way to allow people to just like contribute whatever they want on Patreon? Like that's what I would prefer. Like just like pay what you want. I don't care. Like if you can do $1, do $1. If you can do more, do more. Like I understand people are hurting, and especially in this economy. I mean, it's what we're talking about right now. So I know folks are hurting, and so I get it, and I don't want you to contribute. If you can't afford it, don't do it. But if you can't afford it, please, it would mean a lot to me. It would just let me know, for one, that folks really want to see this thing continue and grow and thrive. And so if you feel that way, if you like what you see and you can spare a few bucks a month, please do me that favor, and it would mean so much to me. And I think what I'll do is I'll probably like add like some credits onto this thing or some sort of thank you page or something where I'll like thank everybody, and like, I don't know, I'll definitely shout you out if you become a patron. I'll give you a shout out in these videos and stuff, and like I'll add that to the Patreon description and stuff. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Please, if you haven't already, I see we got more viewers than likes, so please do me a favor if you haven't already and hit that like button below and subscribe. And yeah, hit the notification bell if you're into that and you don't mind getting notifications. Please hit that notification bell so that you know whenever I go live, which I'll be doing a lot in the over these coming weeks and months. And so yeah, get the notification and come check me out and chat with me. And please, I love to hear feedback and everything. So love chatting with you guys. So drop some comments and talk to me here. All right, so yeah, I've been going for a while now. Let me see how long has this stream been running. Okay, over an hour now. All right, we've been streaming for over an hour now. That's pretty solid. What do y'all think? Anyone have any other comments? I think that I'm gonna probably stop this stream soon because I think I've run out of things to say here on this point. I mean, I can always keep going, trust me, but I don't want to run too long. Some other things I'll say is that I think that what we need is around in the housing market specifically. So let me talk about this. One of the key solutions I think for the housing market that we need to implement is, I'll talk about this channel is called Radical Democracy, and part of the reason for that is that I believe in the concept that Cornel West describes as radical democracy, which is just the idea of extending democracy into all the institutions that are sort of our vital institutions in society. And so that would be it extending democracy from politics into, say, the workplace, or from democracy from politics into our housing, or into our food industry, or into our criminal justice system. And what does that mean? I mean, in the criminal justice system, that can look like things like community review boards, things like rotating, ending policing. How about that? Like, that's number one. That would be really democratic. Let's defund and end policing as an institution as we know it today. If you haven't already, I haven't quite yet, but definitely read this book. I've only flipped through a little bit, and this is the next up on my list of things to read right now. And this is The End of Policing by Alex Vitale, and you can catch him. He's done some really great interviews on Rising on the Hill and a few other places. Check him out. He does some really great interviews where he digs deeper into this. But this is, The End of Policing, and I'll just read you the front of this if you can't see it, but it says, the problem is not police training, police diversity, or police methods. The problem is the dramatic and unprecedented expansion and intensity of policing in the last 40 years, a fundamental shift in the role of police in society. The problem is policing itself. And so he lays out a really clear case for how we could move forward in a society without policing as we know it today. And so I do think that that's what we need to move towards. And so yeah, that's one place. Democracy extending into that probably means getting rid of the institution of policing as we see it, as it exists right now today. But and you can see my little defund the police sign up there. Black trans lives matter. All right, so yeah, I think that democracy in our criminal justice system could look like that. Could look like rotating members of this new peace officer system. Like, we could have rotate people in and out, and of course police wouldn't have responsibilities like dealing with mental health cases or homelessness or drug addiction. Like, those are not problems for police to be handling. Those are problems for healthcare professionals to be handling, and social workers. So yeah, I think that we could have democracy in our housing specifically, since this is about housing. I think that democracy in the housing would look like democratically run tenant, what do they call them? Like you can have tenant unions for one, but what I really want to see is literally just having the people who live in a place be part owners of that place. You shouldn't be able to own any kind of housing and rent it out to another individual that's not you. You can share in us, and we would be able to share in that. We would all be just the same way that we get rid of the employer employee. Feudalism was the lord and the serf, and then we got landlord and tenant, and that's another dialectic that I want to get rid of, the landlord tenant. I want to get rid of those relationships, because there's tension within those relationships, as folks like, this is what like Hegel, I think, talked about with dialectics, the master slave dialectic and the employer employee dialectic. Richard Wolff does a great piece on this, and I want to get rid of the landlord tenant dialectic. I want to I want to turn that on. I want to, people should be their own landlords. Tenants should be their own landlords. People should have democratic control over the places that they live, and that just means that we would have a democratic say in where we lived, how those houses were built, things like solar paneling and things like that. Like, we would be able to have some say in, and that sort of stuff. And then, how much the rents are and what we do with the profits of all the rent that we collect. Do we use it to maintain the place? Do we put in some sort of like rainy day fund for emergency fund or something like that? Do we, build community, like a park in our neighborhood with that? What do we do with the profits of our housing? And if we're even operating this thing for a profit, because I don't think that housing should be operated for a profit. I don't think that there should be a profit motive in healthcare or housing or anything that we declare a human right shouldn't have a profit motive in there. We should identify a list of things that we consider human rights in this country. In 1944, I think it was, the 1944 State of the Union by FDR, I think he laid out an economic bill of rights. That was over 76 years ago now, I think, that he laid out an economic bill of rights. And I think that that's the least we can do. He talked about things like, the right to housing, to, safe housing, to a dignified living wage, a dignified job with a living wage, that, and enough time for recreation. And so, yeah, I think that these are, things that we should, as a society, be guaranteeing to people. We should identify that list of human rights, and then we should guarantee those things. And just some things should just be off the table. Substantive issues should be off the table. Anything that substantively affects somebody's life should be off the table. Housing, off the table. Right now, I believe in this society, electricity and internet, off the table. I don't think that, things like broadband access, those things should not be left up to private profit motives. Like, I'm lucky enough to live in a place where we have municipal broadband, and our internet is so much better than the like Comcast or like, I don't know, Xfinity. Yeah, Comcast, Xfinity, one in pricing and in service. It's just so much better, and it's so much cheaper. And that's because we have, it's a public utility, and these should be public utilities. Transportation is something that should be off the table. Like, people need transportation, and we have an unfair, regressive way of doing our transportation system, like toll roads. Like, why do I just talked about earlier, I owed $1,000 in toll roads. Like, what's $1,000 to like Jeff Bezos, but what's $1,000 to me? When you make, if you're somebody making, something like $25,000 a year, like, you can't pay $1,000 in tolls like that. Are you kidding me? Like, can't even afford the rent at my last apartment, like, much less like, be paying stuff like that. Like, that's absurd. So you definitely, I think that democracy in our housing is the step that we need to take. I think that tenant unions are a good intermediate step. Give people power, more power to the people. And I think that that's a good intermediate step. But I don't like this system of, some people owning the properties and other people having to rent from them, and then those people being, undemocratically, have undemocratic power over another person. It's just not the way that we should structure our society. It's not the way that we would structure a fair society. Who who came to be the first owners of the land, and why, what gave them the right, they how did they obtain it, what gives them the right. And so What Up America says it's hard because the people with the greatest ability to change it are also the ones already in control. Yeah, that is one of the toughest things. It's like the system is set up so well to do what it does. Like, everybody says the system is broken, but that's wrong. The system isn't broken. The system is working exactly as it was intended, right? This is exactly how the system is intended to work, right? To destroy the masses of people so that a handful of people can live really, really well while the rest of us sort of struggle and fight over the scraps. And so, yeah, What Up America is on point there. It's hard because the people with the greatest ability to change it are also the ones already in control, right? So, like, they're the ones that are benefiting from the system, right? The people with the best ability to change the system are the same ones that are benefiting from that system, and they're in control of the system, right? You can't break the rules when you're the one that makes the rules, right? So they just make the rules and they just change the rules so that the rules fit them, right? So they're not breaking the rules per se. They're not doing anything illegal usually, right? But they're the ones making all the rules, right? They control our Congress. They bought and paid for all of these, politicians, and so they're their corporate donors. You can check opensecrets.org. It's a fun exercise if you're ever bored and want to really find out who really owns your local politicians or your congresswomen or congressmen. If you want to find out who really owns them, check out opensecrets.org and you'll find out everything, like, that you need to see, because sadly in this country we made bribery legal with the what was it, Citizens United made bribery legal and said, corporations can give unlimited, anonymous amounts of money to campaigns, when a person can't do that. Who's got unlimited money? Who's got billions of dollars on leverage like some of these companies? Who's got millions of dollars even, right, on leverage like some of these companies? So an average person can't do that. So we just don't have it. So to act like, corporate personhood was one of the most insane freaking, the idea that a corporation is a person. I've never seen a corporation put on trial for murder, for robbery, even though look what they do, look how many people have died from the opioid crisis. Like, those people, like, we lock up heroin dealers, right? But we don't lock up, so we'll lock up one type of opiate dealer, right? But we won't lock up the other opiate dealer, right? We won't lock up the, who are they? Purdue, right? Purdue Pharma, they were the OxyContin folks, right? We won't lock up them, the Sackler family, right? They don't get locked up, even though they were pushing more drugs than any friggin' local drug dealer I've ever met in my damn life, pushing harder drugs than any drug dealer I've ever met in my life, and getting people killed for it wantonly, just, yeah. And so What Up America says it's so undemocratic. Absolutely. We've lost our democratic control, right? This isn't what democracy is. Democracy says, democracy is the concept that one person, one vote in all important matters, right? And everything that directly affects a person, right? One person, one vote. That's not what we have here. There's this graph that I wish I could find. I should find this graph. I will try to look for it real quick and see if I can find it. But there's a graph that shows that how much they asked, like, how much does public opinion, it was a Princeton study, I believe, so they did a study, I think it was a Princeton study, of the effects of public opinion on public policy. And what they found was that pretty much for average people, like for the masses of people, our opinions, public opinion has no impact whatsoever on public policy. What is public policy impacted by? The opinion of the absolute wealthiest people. So I'll see if I can pull this thing up, but I didn't have it ready, so I apologize. All I'm finding is like the really dense research papers. I just want to show you the image of it because it's so striking when you see it. So let me see if I can just find the graph of this thing. Oh, here we go. I think this is it. Yeah. Here's one of them that I think is good. It's not the exact one that I was looking for, but it's better than nothing. Okay, let me show you this graph here. All right. So okay, yeah, let me show you this and then I'll just read from it too. Second. Or yeah. All right, so here we go, and this is the graph right here. Let me see if I can just like zoom in for you real quick. So hopefully you're seeing this zoomed in too. Okay, yep, you are. All right, so yeah, so here's a graph of the average citizens' preferences versus the economic elite's preferences, right? And so you can see here, it's like, this is the graph here. And you'll see what they concluded here in case you're not seeing it. So it's saying no matter what across the board, like no matter what the thing was, you pretty much had a, you know, less than say 20% chance. It was about, what was it? It was about so essentially, no matter what the public opinion, whether you had a 0% opinion or a 100% like popularity of a public policy, it averaged out about 20% across the board, or whatever the probability of actually that policy getting passed. Whereas with the elites, you can see it was like, you know, the more of them that wanted something, the much higher probability of that policy getting adopted, right? So you can see it's like 0% here, and then like, you know, closer to like 40% up here. So they said, and they summarized, they said the central point that emerges from our research is that economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impacts on U.S. government policy, while mass-based interest groups and average citizens have little or no independent influence, the scholars conclude, providing substantial support for the theories of economic elite domination and biased pluralism. And so this is a 2010 study by Jacob S. Hacker of Yale and Paul Pearson of University of California, Berkeley. Okay, so yeah, there we have it. We have no impact. We have no impact on public policy, and it's a shame. It's terribly undemocratic. It's so undemocratic, and that's why we have to start building up democracy in our own, you know, from the ground up, grassroots, in our own institutions. You know, Mondragon is a worker cooperative, the largest one in the world. It's in the Basque region of Spain, and they have hundreds of thousands of workers there now. And they started as 5 people 50 years ago, 60 years ago now. They started as 5 people, and they worked, and, you know, and they built it up from that. So we can do the same. We just have to start now. We have to start building democratic institutions. We have to, you know, build democracy. If we, you know, this thing that I'm doing now, if it ever grows, it'll grow into a democratic, you know, business. It'll grow into a democratic workplace. If I can ever hire somebody, they'll have a democratic say in what goes on, and I'll try to, you know, build democracy into the platform as much as possible. But that's how it has to be. We have to. I'm working on another side project with some friends, and that's the number, you know, that's the only rule there that, you know, I really brought to the table, was just, it has to be democratic. That's all, you know, and we're all politically aligned, and so we all, you know, if I hadn't said it, they probably would have, but That's just what it has to be. We have to start building democracy in our workplaces. That can be through union building, like that's a step forward. It's not the end all be all, because unions are not totally democratic, and they're often these top down hierarchically structured entities that can become corrupted, because any top down hierarchical structure like that can become corrupted, because all you have to do is corrupt a handful of people, and then you corrupt everything below it. You control everything below it. And so, yeah, capitalism is not consistent with democracy. So capitalism and democracy are not consistent, and I'll debate anyone on that. If anyone disagrees with me, please comment below if you disagree with me, or comment if you disagree. But because I will definitely debate anyone on that capitalism is not consistent with democracy. You can't have a system like that where we have an employer who has so much undemocratic power. You don't get to elect your CEO. You don't get to elect the board of directors at the company you work for. They have all the bargaining power. They have all the negotiating power. When you go and you sign a contract to work somewhere, you don't really have a choice in that contract you sign. Sure, you could say no, but then you ain't going to have a job there or anywhere else, because the next place you apply to is going to have that same kind of contract with their non-competes and non-disclosure agreements, and they control all your intellectual property. Everything you create while you're in their walls, even if you thought of it with your own brain, it belongs to them. That sort of thing. It's not democratic. And so as long as if we show up in the place that we spend the majority of our lives, which is our workplaces, and we don't practice democracy there, we're never going to practice real democracy in our politics, when that's a system that we only participate in once every 2 to 4 years. Some people once every 4 years, for a lot of people. For some people once every 2 years. And so, that's not a system that teaches people how to be democratic. And so, and how to have a say in things that affect them. It teaches everyone to be kind of passive and to accept this idea that there are some, there has to be a ruling class. There has to be the bosses, and there's got to be a boss class, and we all need a boss to direct us around. But everybody hates their boss for some reason, and nobody, everybody wants to be a boss, but nobody wants to be bossed around. And the only way you get that is through workplace democracy. Everybody gets to be a boss, and they also have to be accountable to other people. So thank you so much to whoever we got the next like. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Please, if you haven't already, like, subscribe below, and if you can afford it, do me a really amazing favor, and check out the description box below and sign up for the Patreon below. So we're just talking about the impending housing crash, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you have any, please drop some comments in the chat. Love to hear from everybody here. So What Up America says, I think most people have a hard time imagining how it would be if our society were different. Capitalism feels like it's the way things work. Yeah, absolutely. There's I was watching a clip recently of Michael Brooks's where he says that, people on the left, it's the difference between the left and the right, really, and, and conservatism and sort of progressivism, socialism. It's that on the left, we historicize, and on the right, they naturalize, right? So on the left, we historicize. We look at the history and we look at the past and we say, okay, let's look at this as like a blueprint for how, things were done, but as a sort of roadmap, more, let's say, a roadmap for how things were done, and sort of follow how we can follow from that to learn from those sort of mistakes of the past and use that to influence our decision making moving forward. And with the right, they just naturalize it. They look at it and they go, oh, that's the past, and the past is how everything has to be, and it's just the way it is. And so you get a lot of people that, absolutely feel like that's just the way it is. But that's exactly what people said about feudalism when they were in the midst of feudalism, and that's the exact same thing that people said about slavery when slavery was the system in this country, right? Nobody thought that we would see a day when slavery wasn't the economic system, the ruling economic system, and everybody in feudalism thought that there would never be anything after feudalism, right? But we found with all of those economic systems of the past, there's never been an economic system in this world that has survived indefinitely. And so all we know from history is that economic systems come and go. And I don't think the socialism that I described will be the end of it. I hope that we will do even better than what I can even imagine someday. So Plurality of One says, Everyone hates their boss for a reason. Authoritarianism is not natural. Much love. Yes, thank you so much, Plurality of One. Thank you so much for commenting. Really appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to my channel. Really happy to have you here. So let me just say that again for everyone. Plurality of One says, everyone hates their boss for a reason. Authoritarianism is not natural. Much love. So yes, like everyone, nobody who, it's not how we used to exist at any point in our, in the history of humanity. Have we, operated in this way where we said, we don't have basic determination over our own lives in that basic way, right? And like, nobody wants to. Look at what happened historically, right? The people we used to have these people that they were the ruling class, and if you were one of their children, you got to be part of the ruling class, right? And they had all the power and all the wealth, right? And they were the lords, and we had to be their subjects, right? And we had to go and we had to be their loyal subjects, right? And what happened, right? Richard Wolff says those people, we decided to separate a lot of their heads from their bodies, right? And through revolution, right? And we decided we didn't want any, that was called monarchy, and we didn't want monarchy anymore, right? We didn't want any kings and queens. We didn't want that. So if we don't want kings and queens in our political system, why do we want kings and queens in our economic system? Why would we want kings and queens, these people with all this power over us, to be in our workplace where they can decide on a whim to just fire us on a whim, right? You show up to work one day and all of a sudden you don't have a job anymore, right? That's happened to countless people. And there's these people, and I work in the tech industry, and they love to talk about how they're risk takers. And I found in my own company, startup company when I was in college, and still up and running today. It's called Nimble Notes. You can check it out. It's nimblenotes.com. But like, I started a business. I'm technically the CEO of that business, even though we now operate democratically. But I've seen the inside. I've seen this from the inside, and I know how this thing works. And I've seen it from the way inside, where they actually tell you like really gross stuff when you're building a business and you're starting a business out. Like, they told me, like, keep as few people as possible on the board of directors. There were 3 of us that started the business together. 2 of us went to the initial meeting with this corporate lawyer. And the corporate lawyer was trying to convince the 2 of us to wedge out the 3rd person, to not give them any power, So already with just 3 people, and they're already trying to create a hierarchy with just 3 people, they're trying to say, no, keep it as small as possible, keep the power amassed in as few hands as possible. And they say all these things to scare, new entrepreneurs into this way of thinking, into this accepting this neoliberal ideology of like, oh yeah, no, it has to be this way. We have to have bosses, and the bosses have to tell us what to do. I had one of my old COOs in the tech industry told me that, we can't do, we can't have democracy like that, because look at how our political system is, and it's already so inefficient, and all the bureaucracy and it's so inefficient. But it's like, look at how inefficient this is. Look at what capitalism just got us into. Look at this pandemic. Look at this economic crisis. Every 4 to 7 years, we have a downturn or a collapse or a crash or a recession or a depression. Every 4 to 7 years, wherever capitalism has existed, it's done this. They call it the business cycle. They have all these nice terms for it because it happens so damn often. They get to come up with a new name for it, like every few years, right? So we're now in what is probably a depression. We're barely made our way out of the 2008 recession, right? We had the 2001 .com bubble, right? The bubbles, they call them bubbles. Isn't that so pretty? Bubble, ooh, bubbles. And absolutely. So I agree 100% there, Plurality of One. Authoritarianism is absolutely not natural. A lot of people like to then turn around and be like, oh, socialism is authoritarian by default, right? Socialism is inherently authoritarian, when that's complete BS, and we know it, right? That what they're doing is conflating socialism as what we know socialism to be, what it was originally pre-1918, right? Like 1917, pre-1917. Everyone took socialism to mean an extension of democracy from politics into our economy. So everyone took it before 1917. That's what everybody accepted the word socialism to mean. And then the Soviet Union came in, they came to power, communists, communists came to power, right? And they created this, authoritarian form of, what we wanted, and they called it, communism. And people during the Red Scare era, McCarthyism, they tried to turn around and said, oh yeah, no, socialism is the same thing. But we all knew what socialism was before then, and they try to turn around and act like it's something that's inherently authoritarian, when it's not. What we're talking about is actual a restructuring to completely remove the authoritarianism of capitalism, which is this top-down hierarchical structure that you're stuck within. Who has a choice? Everybody, when you're in college, like, how many people know people or were people who said, or not in college necessarily, but when you're younger and you're growing up and stuff, and you're just like, whatever, how many people said, I want to be my own boss someday? Like, everybody thinks that way, right? Everybody wants to be their own boss someday, because nobody wants to be bossed around by anybody, right? Like, that's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling to know that your life, your livelihood is at somebody else's whim, right? And that somebody else can just show up, be in a pissy mood, have a bad attitude, and just take your job away one day. Like, who the hell wants to live like that? Like, that's what that does to your mental health alone. Like, we should make it illegal. Plurality of One says, yes, sir, it's been propagandized, like you said. Socialism and authoritarianism are actually opposites. Yes, 100%, absolutely. Socialism and authoritarianism are absolutely a dichotomy. They are fundamentally opposed to one another. The socialism that we all, 21st century socialism, what we know socialism to mean, the original meaning of socialism is an extension of democracy from politics into the economy. And that there's nothing, more anti-authoritarian than that, to say, no, there's no longer a ruling class, a handful of people that have all the power in a company, right? They're called the board of directors, right? The board of directors has all the power in a company, right? And they have all the power. They have the power to hire, fire. They can ship your job overseas in a heartbeat, and they do all the time, right? NAFTA, TPP. We know how these trade deals have gone, right? So they will ship your job overseas, or they will pit one worker in one country against another worker in another country in a heartbeat, right? And what is, what's egalitarian about that? There's nothing egalitarian about that. That's authoritarian. That's not a fair, equal system playing out. That's a one set of people, a small handful of people. Usually the board of directors in a company is like less than 20 people. That's less than 20 people with all the hiring, firing power. They can decide where you work, how, what you build, what you use to build it, and then what you do with all the profits of all the labor that you created. Somebody in one of the chats recently, I think it might have been What Up America, that shared this with me the other day, but somebody in the chat the other day showed me this poem called Solid, or it's like a song or a poem called Solidarity Forever, and it's like a union song and stuff, and it's awesome. It's just like talking about like worker power and how you really have like collective power and rising up against the bosses and stuff. But yeah, absolutely. So, socialism and authoritarianism are fundamentally opposite one another, and anyone who says otherwise, please send them to this channel and let's debate them, because they're wrong, and they're emphatically wrong. So they should be corrected, and that has to be corrected, because people will say, oh, well, and I don't want to dismiss or anything. Some people think that socialism can be like a scary word and stuff, but we have to destigmatize it, because it is what it is, and words do matter, and there's no other word that's easy to describe it. That I think that the idea of saying radical democracy or extending democracy, I do think that those play well, and I think that when we come at people and we explain what socialism really means, I think that the modern day attacks against it sort of fall flat, because they love to attack it as like authoritarian. But when you come out and say, no, what we're talking about is democracy, we just want democracy in the workplace, then who can argue that democracy is an authoritarian thing? No, that's fundamentally the opposite, right? We're saying all people, or every single person that's affected by something, is going to get an equal say. One person, one vote. That's the fairest, most egalitarian, most anti-authoritarian system I've ever heard of. So yes, plurality, that was a great point, and yes, I just echo that. Yes, 100%. And that's some really effective propaganda. And if anybody hasn't watched, if to see how propaganda works, I love, one, Manufacturing Consent, which I have here, by Noam Chomsky. Definitely a great book. It's so thick, it's so dense. I've only flipped through little bits of it. Like it's a dense book. I need to read the whole thing someday, but it's dense, it's thick. So that one day I'll make it through that thick, girl. So that manufacturing consent is one, and then the other one that I would recommend is watching Century of Self by I forget who it's by, but it's a documentary about Edward Bernays, and it's really good. I'm gonna watch it soon. Actually, I want to watch it with my girlfriend soon. Really good movie. It's about the guy who, invented propaganda, PR, which he just said. He literally was like, sorry, propaganda's a bad word now. We don't like the word propaganda anymore. We need to rebrand the idea of propaganda, so we should call it public relations. And so this is exactly where like PR was born of propaganda, and everything that we see in like PR departments and public relations and advertising, and that's all propaganda at this point. It's just people, we're being propagandized to constantly all the time. And becoming a good leftist is about being able to recognize propaganda on its face, and obviously in using it effectively for ourselves, right? Because this stuff exists and it's going to be used, and we have to recognize it for what it is and know if we have to use it effectively as well. We're not trying to harm people. We're not trying to do this if we're actually doing it to try to actually help the mass of people. And, obviously, what that means. Everybody thinks they're altruistic, of course. But What Up America says, socialism can mean government control of the means of production in some academic circles. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So and it's not wrong to say that, because there is just like capitalism has a lot of different versions of it, right? No, capitalism isn't one thing. There's capitalism in America is different than capitalism in Germany, which we were talking about the other night with Ben 2K. We had somebody in the chat who was from Germany, and we were just talking about the economic system there, and they're a capitalist system still, but it's a totally different kind of capitalism. In Germany, at the beginning of this pandemic, they had a 5% unemployment rate, and at this point in the pandemic, they now have a 6% unemployment rate. Meanwhile, our unemployment rate tripled and our unemployment rate at least quadrupled in this country at the same time. So yes, Tammy Van says, sounds like an interesting doc. Absolutely. It's a really interesting documentary on just and some of the examples that they use. This was Edward Bernays himself. And Edward Bernays, by the way, is the nephew of Sigmund Freud. I think that's his name, Freud. So he's the nephew of Freud, and he was in frequent communication with Freud, and that's how he got some of his ideas. And so you learn some of this through this documentary, Century of Self, or Century of the Self, and I think it's on like Netflix maybe, but if it's not, yeah, check it out. I think it's on YouTube at the very least, so I highly recommend it for everyone to have a better understanding of propaganda and how it's used and how it's still being used and leveraged today. So Plurality of One says, well, direct democracy is always the goal. Yeah, I think that direct democracy would be is the goal. Absolutely. That's why this channel is called Radical Democracy. And I think that I love Kyle Kulinski from Secular Talk. If you're not familiar with this channel, check it out. Great YouTube channel, Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk. You gotta be if you're here. He talks about, he had a proposal for direct democracy where like we would put a few things on the ballot for direct democracy in nationwide, like have like nationwide referendums. Like they do this in a lot of other countries, like Australia did this recently, and UK does it, and like a lot of other countries have like the ability to have national referendums, and like you just ask the people a question and let them vote directly. Like no more of this like let's have to elect the politicians and then pray that we can get honest enough ones and ones that are really like courageous enough to go and actually fight for what they claim that they're going to fight for, right? So like instead of having to play that game, we could just have direct democracy, right? Direct democracy, for anyone not familiar that's here, like it's just like the ability to vote on an issue directly, right? Like do you want Medicare for all? Let's just take a vote, national vote, and guess what? I know that it would win, because right now Medicare for all polls at like 60% nationally, but instead we have to elect these representatives to go and do this representative democracy, this republic, and we have a representative democracy, and so we have to go and pick these like corporate bot like assholes and have them go and beg them to go and give us these basic human rights, which is absurd. It's such a backwards like waste of time. And just absolutely, we should be doing direct democracy everywhere we can. And I think that the quickest way to get to direct democracy is to not wait for it to happen in our political system, but just build it through our workplaces, right? Like build democracy and fight for democracy in locally, right? Like in our housing and in our workplaces are the first two places that I think that we need to really fight for it. Is like, if you live in like an apartment complex or something like that, like you should be talking to all your neighbors and getting together and like starting to form like either a tenant union or, you know, tenant boards where you're like, yo, listen, we're going to start to fight, and we're going to like really tenant unions is where there's the place to start, and unionize as all the tenants. And like, especially during this pandemic when you have all this power and stuff, and like just be like, listen, we're not going to pay you until you know, like XYZ, and like, yeah, the XYZ being like, guarantee everyone no more evictions, you know, like moratorium on all evictions, you know, we'll share, we'll everybody gets, you know, like let's pay reduced rent or whatever, but like if people can't afford it, subsidize everyone's rent should be subsidized. So plurality of one says it's not a really until our tertiary systems. Oh, sorry. Plurality says it's not a reality until our tertiary systems like education, financial, etc. are well regulated. I'm in ANSYNC, which I believe means anarcho-syndicalist, which is what Noam Chomsky is. And Noam Chomsky is one of the greatest intellectuals to ever grace this earth. I put him up there. It's Cornel West and then Noam Chomsky for me. So that's like 1-2. Yeah, Cornel West, Noam Chomsky, Richard Wolff. Those are like my three top public intellectuals right there. And yeah, so I agree. So plurality, again, just to reiterate, says it's not a reality until our tertiary systems like education, financial, etc. are well regulated. And so yes, absolutely. We have to, you know, and that's going to be really hard to do. You know, like for instance, with education, we were talking about this the other night too, like the education funding, the way that we fund education in this country is so backwards. It's like, you know, you have to fix that system in order to, it's not like if we it's not like we can move forward until that major roadblock is removed, right? Like we have to get to the point that we're no longer funding education based on local property taxes, right? Like that's an absurd ass backward system that we cannot allow to continue, and we have to fight to get that change. And so yeah, I think that it's going to be very difficult to do. I do think that we can build democracy in things like, say, the workplace early on, but only it's really difficult. That's an uphill battle too, I believe. I think that it's really going to take it takes a lot of special factors, and it's not like everyone's going to be able to do this. It's going to be small pockets of people being able to do this, and it'll grow over time. But places like Cooperation Jackson are doing it right now, and there are worker cooperatives in the US right now. They're like in the tech industry. I work in software. There's a cooperative called Sassafras. That's a tech cooperative. And there's a tech cooperative in like Massachusetts here. There's like a tech cooperative of like New England or something like that. So there are cooperatives. There are worker cooperatives in places. It's very difficult to find though. And it's also very difficult to get support as a worker cooperative in our current economy, right? Like there's no financial institutions, like what plurality is saying here is that like there's no financial institutions for like people that, like a worker cooperative to go get loans from, right? But capitalists have all kinds of institutional power set up, right? That all kinds of, you know, political power and institutional power set up. They have politicians that, you know, Nancy Pelosi famously came out and, you know, a person asked a question about like capitalism or something. A kid asked a question to her about capitalism, and she laughed at them and was like, we're all capitalists now, and laughed at them or whatever. And that's the thing. So even the Democrats, they're proud capitalists. The Republicans are all capitalists, and so like, yeah, they're you know, it's really hard. They have a lot of support in there. So Tammy says that she thinks she found the whole documentary, and I think she tried to share it, but stupidly they took her link away, I think, because they're evil like that. So I apologize, Tammy. I think they took your link away. if you message me the link, I'll drop the link in there for everyone. And if I can figure out how to stop that from happening, I will do that, because I don't want that to be the case. I trust links being shared, but I guess they just like kind of take them out by default. I don't know. That's weird. So plurality of one says it's the easiest. Everyone has a home. We just have to activate. Oh, sorry. So I think this is continuing on from where plurality said, you are so right. Housing is key. It's the easiest. It's the easiest. Everyone has a home. We just have to activate the everyday worker. Yes. Historically, yes, absolutely. Like housing, yes, that could be because that's like one that's in being on the brink, to bring it back full circle to what this stream was originally about, being on the brink of a housing collapse like we are right now. We should absolutely like this is the time to start to build democracy in our housing. Like this is it right here. Like we're talking about millions of people possibly losing their homes now. Like we can't let that happen. And like this is the time for fellow, folks to just stand up. If you see somebody getting evicted or something like that, to stand with them, and also just to form tenant unions and to start to build democracy in your housing by building, tenant power, really. And that's like through like you can, if you get enough, a significant amount of the renters in a place to if you can get them to go on a rent strike, like you have immense power as the renters. You do have economic power, but only collectively. So we absolutely have to build collective power. It's the only way forward. And so I think that it's, and you may be, I would, what do you have any ideas about how to build that power, plurality? Do you have any thoughts, any ideas on how we build, activate those everyday workers? Because I think that people are waking up to this, this realization now. I think that the pandemic did a lot to sort of, we've seen from the George Floyd protests that, the protests that happened in the wake of the George Floyd lynching, that there's clearly a lot of unrest and civil unrest right now in this country. And so I think people are sort of at a fever pitch right now and really like just need the right thing to prod them, to get them over, to push them to start to band together like this and to really start to build some real worker solidarity. So yeah, I'd love to hear more. If anyone has any ideas about how we do that, I'd love to hear more. My personal belief is just through, I think it's building tenant unions is going to be the most powerful step forward. I think it's one of the big first steps that we can take, but that takes, starting to just build relationships within your own, community, with your own neighbors, starting to build those relationships and just kind of gauge people where they're at. Are they struggling? Do they know people that are struggling? And kind of getting an idea of that, because a lot of people are struggling and just are afraid to talk about it. It's really stigmatized. And so coming with your own personal story first can be a big help, and to sort of like break the ice and then get people talking. I had a friend who lived in a place called Revere here in Massachusetts, and he lives in a building that was considered like one of the worst maintained buildings in the state, and like all the tenants got together and like got fed up because the elevator wasn't working for like months on end. And there were like elderly people that lived on like the 11th floor of this building. There was like an elderly veteran that lived on the 11th floor of this building and had to walk up and down the stairs, like 11 flights of stairs. And they're not like short flights, like 11 long flights of stairs every day. But like had to stop leaving his house for a lot of reasons because he couldn't make it up and down the stairs anymore. And like they finally got fed up and were just like, enough is enough, and started posting like notes inside of the working elevator to each other, and like started this whole thing, and then banded together. And they, lo and behold, they got that maintenance or like housing management company sued, and the state is now suing that housing management company. And those people, that's worker power right there. Like those things that's tenant power right there. And like that's possible with enough people. You just have, it started through messages, and then all of a sudden they were sharing email addresses, and then they were posting things on the bulletin board in the apartment building, and then people were joining in, and enough people get fed up with this stuff, and all it takes is one or two people to trigger it. So okay, so plurality says just giving people accurate information. It's what people need with the pairing of philosophical and historical analysis. Yes. And honestly, that's a big part of what I'm trying to do here, and why I would love to grow this channel, is because I think we need more voices like this out there in the mainstream. And we recently lost one of the biggest voices on the left, one of the biggest and brightest and best voices on the left, in Michael Brooks. And nobody's going to fill those shoes. I damn sure will never be as funny as that dude, never be as, informed or, capable of clearly, articulating points as Michael Brooks. But I mean, we're going to lose people, and we need to fill those spaces, and we have to continue. We need more, right? We're not winning enough right now. And one of Michael Brooks's big things was about winning. The left needs to start winning, and we're not going to win if we don't start to grow and support and each other on the left in this movement. And so rest in power, Michael Brooks. Plurality says rest in power. Yes, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Rest in power, Michael Brooks. That dude is a legend and such a huge influence for me, and got me really to start this channel up. And if you could check my intro video that I did months ago, I gave him a shout out in it, when I mentioned some of the people that influenced me and that I consider big names and influential people on the left. And I mentioned him up there with Cornel West and Noam Chomsky, and I put him up there. And so dude was a legend, and we have a lot, we have to fill that space. And so I do believe with enough support, we can eventually, I can become one of the many voices to try to help fill that void that's left behind. But there was already a void there already, and it's just became a much larger void with the loss of Michael. So yeah, I think that we need to inform people, give people accurate information, right? And try to become influencers in these spaces, so that we can have some of this control over the zeitgeist, sort of, in what gets put out there and what becomes public knowledge and common knowledge and common sense. And the only way we do that is by supporting and growing these sorts of things on the left, and support leftists, support left movements, and in whatever way you can, either by just being here, participating, talking, chatting it out, and having these discussions. That's one huge way. That's probably the biggest way. And then if you can, and if you can afford it, I mentioned it before a couple of times, and I'm going to keep mentioning it because I'm broke and I need it. But if you can't afford it, I have a link in the description below to my Patreon. It's new. I've got no subscribers, no pledge right now. I would love to, by the end of this stream, have one pledged, subscriber on Patreon. That would be beautiful, and I'd love you all for it. So if anyone can afford it, please do me the favor of just, clicking that link, the Patreon link in the description below, and just if you can afford it, again, I stress that if you can afford it, I know it's tough times for everybody, please do me a favor and subscribe to my Patreon and support this channel, because I do think that you're here early, and I know it's a really small endeavor and it's tiny right now, but I do think that this thing can grow into something big, and I'd love to bring all your voices along with me, and really just become a loud what are those things called, loudspeaker or whatever, a microphone for you guys to just kind of megaphone, become a megaphone for the left, to just keep on promoting these ideas and really promote socialist, left-wing socialist ideas, internationalist socialist ideals, and start to build a vision and continue to build a vision and power on the left moving forward. So that's really what this channel is about, and it's about informing people and getting people the right kind of information and having these kind of discussions out, and really learning along the way with each other, and developing and growing together, and honestly just becoming better lefties for it. So that's what I'm here to do, and I'm really, really thankful, seriously, for everybody that's here and joining me and joining in the chat. This means so much to me, and it really means a lot, and I appreciate it. And I really do think that we're building something here, and we're at the very, very beginning of building something that could be really powerful. And so just thank you for participating in that, and please keep coming back and keep chatting and leaving your comments, leaving your thoughts. I love hearing from you, and so If you haven't already, I see that we got more viewers than likes in here. So please, if you haven't already, please smash that like button right below. If you're on the phone, you need to close the chat out real quick and then press the like and subscribe button for me. And like, subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications if that doesn't stress you out. And then if you can, please, description box, I got a link to my Patreon. Just click that link, go sign up. Throw me a few bucks on Patreon, and I'll love you so much for it. I really will. I'll give you a shout out, and I'll think of some other cool stuff to do. But you'll really be helping this channel to grow, to survive, and to grow. And so I appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. So thank you all just for being here. Let me keep up with these comments. So plurality. And I also agree about, you got to pair that with the philosophical and historical analysis. And we're so good at doing that on the left on historicizing a lot of these things. And I'm trying to be even better. I'm actually getting back into school, and my hope is to study some history in economics and political science. I'm trying to figure out international affairs. I'm trying to figure out exactly where I'll end up. I'm already I'm working on finishing my bachelor's degree in software engineering, which I'm very close to, one semester away from, and then I'm gonna move forward into that. And so I do think that my goal is to study under Cornel West or Richard Wolff, but that's a dream, and who knows if it'll come true. But that's the goal. And so, yeah, I think that those things are very important, bringing in the philosophy, the history into that. And I think that something that Michael Brooks was trying to bring into it recently that I kind of want to try my best to keep an open mind to, and to try to see what I can do to further extend myself, because I think I'm lacking in this space on the left. But it's also spirituality. I'm not a spiritual person. I'm atheist right now, I'm at the very least agnostic, but I'm pretty atheist, I say. But I would like to be more spiritual, and I think that there is something powerful in that, and that there's also a void to be filled, because people are becoming less and less religious, and it opens up a void as well, and people need some sort of spiritual guidance, right? At least right now or in the interim. And we can't just completely lose that. And I love the quote that he uses of Martin Luther King's, where he says Michael Brooks would use this quote of Martin Luther King's, where he says love without power is anemic and performative, or something like that. I'm summarizing. So love without power is like anemic and performative, and power without love is cruel and brutal, something like that. So I'm jacking that up, but it's something like that. And that's a really dope thing that I think that we need to really heed on the left, and recognize that if we have power without love, and we go and we try to get power on the left, and we do that in a way that we are ignorant of love, and we do it in some sort of callous way or something, or try to be too scientific or technocratic, and we lose that ability to really express through policy and through the way that we interact with one another a real strong, powerful love, the kind of love that Cornel West talks about when he talks about Coltrane and Aretha Franklin and just that that kind of love, and really something powerful, and so love without power, it's really it's something that's it's just if you have love with no power, it's just it's just this figurative almost thing that's just it's performative, and it's weak, and so it can't really there's nothing to stand on there. And so you have to have love, you have to have an understanding of love and power. And so I think that that's something else that we should recognize on the left and try to emulate on the left, is just trying to think in that way and bring that into our own evaluation and sort of self-reflections, and try to go from there, move forward from there. So plurality says there's so much smog, it's hard to hand the keys, but pointing towards the lighthouse, I hope, is good enough. We don't have the time for the other. There exists too much suffering. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, exactly. We don't know exactly where to go, but we're pointing in the right direction, right? We're hopefully if we just get here, right? If we can just get to the point of Medicare for all, right? A basic living minimum wage, right? Like housing is a human right. Like that sounds so freaking foreign in this country, but like if we can get those things, like that would be, I mean, if we could just get Medicare for all, right? Like that would change the world, really. Like it would change this country. It would change the world, though. But like, it would definitely, it would impact so many people's lives. And like, I mean, we have, what is it like? I think it's 500,000 people a year go bankrupt from medical debt. Like 500,000 people a year go bankrupt from medical debt. And I think it's something like 40 something thousand who die because they're uninsured. And many more who die from being underinsured. So, I mean, you're talking about saving tens of thousands of lives at least a year, saving hundreds of thousands of people from, you know, mental health crises and personal crises of having to go bankrupt. And I mean, we just gave $4.5 trillion. The Fed is printing, like literally printing they're injecting $1 trillion a day. And at the peak of the pandemic, when it first hit and stuff, they were injecting $1 trillion a day into the supermarket. That means that in 1.5 days, they had injected enough money to cancel all student loan debt in the country. So in 1.5 days, they could have, instead of doing all the garbage that they did, they could have literally canceled all student loan debt held by the DOE, Department of Education. They could have canceled it all. They could have resolved it all. Everybody that had a student loan would have that wiped out, and they'd have a clean slate. And then we can move forward from there with, you know, free public college for everyone. Like, but these are the political choices that are being made, right? And so, yeah, and I agree that there just exists too much suffering, right? Too much suffering in this world, and it's needless suffering is what's clear. It's needless suffering. It's suffering that could be resolved, but for, you know, this handful of people that are the people in power. If it weren't for them, if they weren't standing in our way, you know, we could solve problems of homelessness. Like, I'm gonna pull it up soon and like show you the calculation and stuff. But you can, I'll do the calculation real quick on my thing. I'll just pull up a calculator. I don't have it here. Maybe I can. I'll pull it up for all of us to see here. Ready? I think I can grab this window. Sorry, I've never done this. I don't know if I can pull up if I can show my calculator. Oh yeah, here we go. All right. So I think you guys can see that. So look at, ready? The military budget in this country is currently here. So military budget, I think at last thing it's what is it, 750 billion, I believe. 780 billion, right? So it is, ready? Okay. You guys can see my little calculator here. So we have 780 billion, ready? So 1, 2, 3. Right, that's 780 million, right? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. So 780 billion, right? Now, the next closest country in the world spends 400 billion. That's China. That's the next closest country on military spending. They spend $400 billion, right? They spend $400 billion on military spending, right? So let's just say that we still maintain the number one spending, right? And we'll spend, let's just say, we keep 480. We'll keep 480 billion, right? So we'll be the next. We'll still be easily the highest thing, right? So we'll subtract 480 billion, right? Right now we're left with $300 billion, right? So out of that $300 billion, right? Let's just divide the 300 billion. So that's all the money that's left over. If we still maintain the number one highest military spending in the world, right? We still have the highest military spending in the world, right? Even though we have 4 times more people, even though China has 4 times more people to protect than us, you know, still we spend 380 million more than them. But So say we spend 300 billion less, right? We'd still be the number one military spenders. We could divide that amongst every single homeless person in the country. Remember earlier I said that the official count is 550 million, right? Sorry, 550,000 is the official count. But let's just be really generous and call it a million, right? So how much, this is our yearly annual budget, right? So you just divide it by 1 million, right? 1 million, right? That's $300,000 every single year for every single homeless person in this country. So we could give every single homeless person in this country every single year on what's excess in our military budget. We could give every single homeless person $300,000 a year and still be the number one military spender in the entire planet, right? And we could give $300,000 to every single homeless person every single year. The average mortgage in this country is $11,000 a year. You're going to tell me with $300,000 a year that we couldn't figure out and solve the homeless problem in this country? $300,000 a year to every single homeless person. That means that even if you assign, so we could assign to every single homeless person in this country, right? We can assign a single caseworker, right? No. Screw that. Let's assign 2 caseworkers for every single homeless person in this country. That's 1 million homeless 1 million homeless people. We're going to assign 2 caseworkers, right? 2 caseworkers to every single homeless person. And we're going to pay each one of those caseworkers $100,000 each, which is a decent living wage, right? So we could take 2 caseworkers for every single one homeless person, and we could give them $100,000 a year salary, right? And we could say, it's your job to take this last $100,000 and to find this person housing, food, education, whatever else the hell they need, right? Transportation if they need it, buy them a car, whatever the hell else they need, right? You could have $100,000 extra, plus you gave 2 jobs for every homeless person you got 2 jobs added, right? So that's 1 million people homeless. That's 2 million new jobs, right? 2 million new jobs, right? So that's 2 million new jobs created, and you go and you get every single homeless person helped out, taken off the streets, and taken care of. And we still have enough money left over to be the number one friggin' military spender in the world. And we're not doing this. You tell me, is that not a political calculation? Is that not political choice right there? Dude, so Plurality says absolutely insane amount, right, dude? It's insane. That's absurd. That is absolutely insane. Let me. Oh shoot! I don't think I showed you. I'm sorry. I didn't have the calculator up there the whole time. I apologize. You guys couldn't actually see me doing the calculation, but I assure you, okay. I'll just show you. I mean, you sorry that I didn't have that up there for you. That's 300 million, 1, 2, 3, and then 300 billion divide by 1. 300,000. So you see, insane amount of money, right? So all right. So yeah, just an absolutely insane amount of money, like Plurality says. So in Plurality also dropped a quote here. He said, from the late great Patrice Lumumba, who was assassinated in what was probably, I believe it might have been CIA backed coup. He became the I don't know my African history well enough, but I forget which country. I forget, is it the People's Republic of Congo? I can't remember. That he became the leader of, and then was assassinated, unfortunately, because he was a true person of the people. And so quote from him: "Without dignity there is no liberty. Without justice, there is no dignity. And without independence, there are no free men." Patrice Lumumba. Beautiful quote. I'll say that one more time for those that didn't catch it. Without dignity, there is no liberty. Without justice, there is no dignity. And without independence, there are no free men. Yeah, absolutely, right? So you can't have liberty without dignity. People need dignified living, dignified, jobs. You deserve a dignified wage. You deserve a dignified job. You deserve a dignified home. And without justice, there's no dignity. We all see that in this country. We all see the lack of justice there. And without independence, there are no free men. And independence means independence from things like, and I think that this wasn't Lumumba. This was Thomas Sankara, who talked about another African leader who was assassinated. He talked about the fact that the idea of humanitarian aid being a form of imperialist rule. So even things like that, that's not, you don't have independence and you're not free. If you depend on humanitarian aid from the US, your country isn't able to be truly free. And so we love this like soft imperialism that the US does, where we go and we talk about humanitarian aid, when really it's just a way of, because what happens once you give somebody humanitarian aid, once you give somebody humanitarian aid, then you can take it away, right? And taking away humanitarian aid is pretty much an act of violence. I mean, you're pretty much guaranteeing that some people are going to suffer and probably die from the lack of aid, right? Because you don't give people humanitarian aid unless there's a humanitarian crisis that they need aid for. So the fact that they're getting humanitarian aid, it's a way that, like, it's like that saying, like, you can catch a person a fish and feed them for a day, or you can teach a person to fish and feed them for the rest of their lives. Like, what the US is trying to do with this like humanitarian aid garbage is like catch a person a fish and keep on catching them a fish and keep them coming back for more, so that they're constantly dependent on the US, so that they can constantly influence them, right? And become like puppet governments for the US, right? For Western imperialism. So just gotta, in true, Brooksian fashion, we gotta highlight those things and recognize the sort of American exceptionalist, American privilege in in everything that we do, really, and in all these discussions. And so, yes, absolutely agree 100% with Patrice Lumumba. He's a great man that everyone should read up on more. I should read up on more. Everything I've read about him, I've loved. He's a man of the people who really did fight for, overthrew, I think, colonialist rule. And I think maybe it was by the Dutch. I can't remember. Belgians. And then eventually got murdered, and I think he had to kill himself, I believe, to because he wouldn't let them take him or something like that. But it was in a coup, and it was tragic, and the dude was great. But like every great socialist leader, that's why what Fidel Castro did, like in Cuba, like, how many miles, like tens of miles off the coast of the US, and this dude managed to have a socialist government survive like that. Like, that's incredible. And, not something to be like scoffed at. That is an incredible feat to accomplish. So yeah, props to shout out to Castro. Bet you don't hear that on CNN ever. So let's see real quick, just checking out the streams. Just want to drop in and just check out the Twitch chat just to make sure. Oh shoot, I'm so sorry y'all. I really missed out. What's up, Amber Happy? What up to you too, Amber Happy? If you're still in there on Twitch, what up to you too? Thank you so much for being here. Oh, looks like we got a new follower on Twitch. Shout out to Shadow Gang 1. Nice. Gang. Thank you, Shadow Gang 1. I really appreciate the follow. Thank you so much. If you're here on Twitch, please do me a favor and follow. Looks like Thanatos was able to get that. I'm pronouncing that wrong. Thanatos was able to get that that link in the Twitch chat. So if you're watching on Twitch, check it out. She dropped the link to the Century of Self video on the documentary on, I think it's YouTube. It's on YouTube, so you can watch the full documentary. It's a couple hours. It's a really good documentary though. So it's on propaganda. It's about Edward Bernays. Babe, if you're still listening, we should watch it together. So don't watch it yet, please. Wait for me. Yeah, I think we should watch it together because it's really good, and I want to get your commentary on it as we watch it. So yes, would appreciate that. Wait for me. So, oh wait, why does it seem like that? Is my calculator still showing on here? Let me make sure that that's not a thing still. Oh shoot, it is. Man, Sorry about that. Okay. I'm gonna get out of the studio mode on OBS. Sorry, y'all. I'm learning. This is my, second Rail stream, so still getting over a lot of technical difficulties and figuring stuff out. So bear with me, please. Appreciate it. If you're just showing up, please do me a favor and like, subscribe, follow if you're on Twitch. And if you can, I didn't drop my Patreon link. Tammy, maybe you could drop the Patreon link in the Twitch chat, but I'll try to drop that there too. I forgot about that, so sorry. Finding it is a little tricky for me right now too, where I'm at. A little tricky right now. Let's see if I can find it, but yeah, here we go. I'll drop the link in Twitch. Drop it on thing. All right. So yeah, please, if you can, if you're here and you can afford it, please do me a favor, check out my Patreon and throw me a few bucks if you can. It would go so far and it would mean so much. And yeah, I know it's tough time, so not a lot of folks, a ton of disposable income, but I do appreciate it. If you can and you do, that would mean a lot to me. Just to let me know that y'all want to keep this thing going and to keep the lights on around here. So it is greatly appreciated. And thanks to everyone who's here, who showed up, for chatting. I really do appreciate it. Enjoy the comments. I'm just going to check out the Twitch chat to make sure there were no questions or anything like that. I think. Donato says, please notice me. You're so silly. Oh, you're so silly. Okay, so does anyone have any other questions or anything like that? Any other comments, questions, comments, anything like that? I'm gonna probably stop the stream pretty soon. I think that we've sort of gone through the bulk of what I wanted to talk about on this topic. Oh, okay. Tammy says, LOL, okay, nice. I assume that's in response to my weirdness about the link and Twitch. Okay, so please, if anyone else has any questions, comments, anything like that, drop it in the chat and I will read them out before I go. But I'll probably wrap up the stream soon. I think it has been an enjoyable one, and I really appreciate all the comments. I really love the comments. Thanks to What Up America, thanks to Plurality of One, thanks to Tammy Fan. Very special thank you to that wonderful person. What Up America says, fantastic stream, great stuff. Thank you so much, What Up America, and I'll be in touch with you soon. Thank you so much for all the help with everything. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all your help with everything, and I will be in touch soon. Bear with me. I'm really bad on written communication, which is why I started this channel, because I'm much better talking than I am typing. So probably not the best for a software engineer, but that's my life. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, What Up America. And you all make it fantastic, honestly. And I'm not just saying that. Like, what makes the stream good is just folks interacting in here, and that's what really makes it awesome and engaging. So I really appreciate it. It means so much to me for you to be here and to, just follow along with me and chat and have these discussions. It's what I live for, and I really love it and enjoy it. And I'm so thankful to all of y'all for being here. So if you haven't already, I see that we have more viewers than likes, so somebody really needs to hit that like button and subscribe. Please hit the like button below. That's the one small favor that I ask, but I do, if you can spare it, I ask one more favor, which is to just, if you can, check out in the description below of the description of the video on YouTube, and in the chat on Twitch, you'll see a link to my Patreon. I currently have $0 pledged to me on Patreon, and I could really use that first pledge. So if you can spare it, do me a favor and just sign up for my Patreon. I really appreciate it. If you're watching this after the fact, please go ahead, do that. It will mean so much to me, and it will definitely motivate me to keep pushing forward, although I have all the motivation I need in just the crazy way this world exists today. So yes, What If America says anytime, there's no rush, LOL. Thank you so much. Thanks for being understanding. I really appreciate it. And I will be in touch soon, though, as soon as possible, I promise. So any other comments, questions, anything else? I'll flip back and forth between Twitch and this really quickly. And I'm not seeing any, so I think we're good to go. I'll give you a couple more seconds in case anyone does, and we're on the delay. But if I don't get any more comments, I'll probably stop the stream soon. Thank you all. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate it. Come back again. Come back soon. I'll be streaming again soon, I promise. And something that I need to start asking people to do is share this link. Please do me a favor. That's actually the most important thing that you could do, and the biggest thing you could do to help me right now. Is whenever I'm streaming, share the link, share it on your social media, share it with your friends, share it on your Facebook, share it on your Twitter. That'll be huge. So I'll remember to ask you that early next time instead of at the very end. That'll help. But thank you so much for being here and for chatting with me. And please come back again. Like, subscribe, click the bell for the notifications, sign up for my Patreon in the description below. Please come back, comment, chat. Leave your thoughts. I will respond to every comment right now until it gets to be too much to handle. But I look at every single comment, and I will respond to every single one I can. So thank you. I think I just saw a new follow on Twitter or something like that. So thank you so much. If somebody just followed, you are appreciated. And come back for more. I'll be around. Thank you so much. All right, folks, that will be it for now. I might come back on and do another stream later, but, different topic and such. So keep an eye out and keep coming back for more. I love you guys. Thank you so much. We need democracy now. Peace. I lied. Sorry. I'm going to try to end my stream a different way. Sorry, guys. I want to end the stream simultaneously, so I'm going to try to end it through. I'm using Restream to stream through multiple services right now, so in case anyone else interested in streaming and has to deal with that, I'm using Restream. FYI. No secrets here. We keep it all transparent. All right. Sorry, guys. This is my first time working with a new tool here, and I'm just trying to figure out if I can shut down these streams simultaneously. Okay, so we're gonna try this out again, I think. Oh, we got somebody else just decided to pop in. Thank you so much for popping in. It's a little late, unfortunately. We're gonna be ending the stream soon, but please watch the full thing. And if you can, please remember to like, subscribe, click that like button, subscribe. Check out the Patreon in the description below. And if you can't afford it, I really appreciate it. Sign up for the Patreon. It will go a long way. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on whatever. And I love you all. I can't wait to be back and chatting with you again in the future. Very near future. So, peace. This time for real, I think. We'll see. Oh, you know what I should have done? I should have done it a different way. Don't laugh, y'all. Don't laugh. I'm goofy. Sorry. I'm gonna figure this out, I swear. Watch. I'm gonna get this. All right. I'm just gonna stop through OBS. Let's see. All right, here we go. Bye. Oh shoot. No.